Hi, my name is Steve Eady. I'm with the Sauk Valley Education Fair. We actually just finished the fair, and we've been interviewing candidates, and with me is Jason Plummer. Jason is running for Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I want to welcome you.
Appreciate it.
And Jason, I don't know if you had a chance to look at these questions beforehand. Some people did. If you didn't, I apologize.
I did not, but that's okay.
So this is good. So
yeah.
you can give them a little bit leeway if other people seem like they've got better prepared answers.
Sure.
But he's willing to sit in front of the camera and be interviewed, which will be posted on YouTube. And let's just start right off the bat and talk about the budget. What's your thoughts on the budget? Are we in a financial crisis? Are we okay? Where's the state of Illinois, and what do we need to do?
We're absolutely we're on the precipice of insolvency is where we're at. I mean, it is a crisis. What we have to do is we have to get some people in Springfield that are willing to make tough decisions. They have to say no sometimes. We don't have that right now.
Okay.
I'm a businessman. I have a lot of political experience. I'm a military officer, but really I'm a businessman.
Okay.
And I think we need more people like that in Springfield. What we have to do to correct the budget, I'll try to keep the answer short, but I could talk for hours on that.
Okay.
Specifically, right now we have at least two, some people would argue 3 programs that within 20 years are supposed to take up 50% or more of the budget each.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the math, it doesn't work. It's unsustainable.
Okay.
We have to look at the pension system. We have to address that immediately. We have to look at Medicaid right now. We have to address that immediately. I think the problem in Springfield right now is we don't have people that make decisions like you do or I do. At your household, you have to make tough decisions. You have to prioritize. You have to say no. At business, we have to do the same thing. If you ran your house or I ran my business like they run Springfield, you'd be homeless, I'd be bankrupt. Springfield is run differently than anything else, and that's why we're in the crisis we're in right now. We really need to get some people there that are willing to take some tough stances on some of the issues. I know it's not easy telling people no, and it's especially easy to say yes when it's not your money. Mm-hmm. We need people in there to realize it is the money of the taxpayers, and they're representing the taxpayers, and they need to do it in a fiscally responsible way.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Medicaid, and that's one of the areas that many people don't realize that with the passing of legislation in Washington,
mm-hmm.
could put more mandates actually on the state of Illinois to increase our Medicaid budget, which I believe is the largest part of the Illinois budget. I wanted to get your thoughts on the healthcare system, what your positive negatives are. What are some proposals that you would see that you'd like to have happen to help solve some of the issues in the medical area?
In the healthcare industry?
Yeah.
I think absolutely the first thing we have to do is look at the tort issues.
Okay.
We have a terrible tort environment in Illinois. Lawsuit abuse is rampant. It drives doctors out of the state. It drives up healthcare costs for businesses and for citizens. And we have to look at that. As far as the national issue, I don't believe that the national bill really has anything to do with healthcare. It has to do with taking 1/6 of the economy and putting it under government control.
Okay.
If that bill was about healthcare for people, they'd be allowing people to go to other states and purchase their healthcare. They'd be addressing the tort issue.
Okay.
They'd be doing those types of things that history and data shows, helps provide better health care at a more efficient price level. We don't have that right now. Medicaid, specifically here in Illinois, some people would say somewhere between 10 and 16% of our Medicaid expenditures are fraudulent. That's a huge chunk of change when you look at total Medicaid expenditures. We need to get someone in there digging into that. Right now, we don't have that.
Okay.
So, the Lieutenant Governor's office, you have to understand the limitations of it.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be drafting legislation. I won't be signing legislation, but I'm going to use the office as a bully pulpit. I'm going to use the influence and resources of the office to address some issues where we're struggling. There's no doubt that that's one of those issues. And so I will aggressively talk about those things. I will aggressively meet with state senators, state representatives, and the governor, and make sure they keep their eye on the ball, because that's a huge issue.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk. Switch subjects here and go on to energy independence.
Sure.
Illinois is a state rich in resources. We have coal reserves. We have actually oil reserves, which I found out in the southern part of the state. We've got more nuclear plants than most other states. We've got corn, soybean, biodiesel, and ethanol, and we've got wind farms. And I guess my thought is the state of Illinois is how can we tap more of our resources to become more energy independent, A. B is, want to get your thoughts on cap and trade, because it will affect the state of Illinois in some way, and we want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, let me answer the second part first. I'm completely against cap and trade.
Okay.
That is, that will drive up energy costs, and it will drive people out of work.
Okay.
Cap and trade is a brutal bill, and we have to oppose that.
Okay.
Getting back to the first thing, it's interesting you bring that up, because I talk about the resources of the state constantly on the campaign trail.
Okay.
If you look at the natural resources, the coal in the ground, the agricultural soil, the oil, everything. If you look at the human resources, we've got a great public university system, we've got a large educated workforce. Geographically, anything that goes by road or by rail through this country is crossing through Illinois. We have all these things going for us. I would argue that Illinois is probably as blessed as any other state out there.
Okay.
Yet we're the bottom 2 of every economic and job creation category. So if it's not a lack of resources, it tells me it's a lack of policy leadership in Springfield. Okay. You brought up the coal industry relating to energy. Absolutely. We've driven the coal industry out of Illinois. We have more BTUs in coal in the state of Illinois than Saudi Arabia and Kuwait combined have in oil. That's a pretty stunning fact if you think about that. You know, we have coal mines all over southern, central Illinois. We don't utilize that resource. We've driven those people out of work. We've driven the industry into other states because we have a terrible we have a terrible tax environment. We have a terrible regulatory environment. You know, we need to change that. We need to provide an environment where capital and where investment will come to Illinois. When capital investment can come to Illinois, jobs, industry, and business will flourish. And the people of the state will be working, will be utilizing the resources that you're talking about. Right now, we're not doing it. It's silly.
Sure. Okay, great. Oh, I guess let me give you the brass tacks question here. Is CO2 a pollutant or not?
Is CO2 a pollutant or not?
Yeah, because that's what cap and trade is based on. That's what the Copenhagen Accords.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I understand that. The problem is what they want to do with CO2. You know, the problem is, and again, understanding the limitations of the office, you know, the problem with the cap and trade bill is that it basically punishes the United States of America. And it punishes all the different states, of course. But everyone else, they can kind of follow the laws. You know, China is going to be a larger pollutant than the U.S. India is going to be a larger pollutant. Other countries as well. And we're tying our hands behind our back. We're destroying jobs for Americans. We're driving industry out of the country. But these other countries are all going to benefit from it, you know. And quite frankly, I think it's based on flawed science. It's also based on flawed fiscal and mathematical projections, you know, with the actual cap and trade legislation, with capping it and trading it. You know, an interesting thing about cap and trade is if you look at who some of the ardent supporters of cap and trade are, some of the people that are funding and financing and behind it. They're also the leading figures who've created the cap and trade industry, the actual trading of the carbon credits. And you know, certain people have a huge financial incentive to see that bill passed because they've laid the groundwork for the system. You know, well, what about the coal industry? What about the coal miner in Southern Illinois? What about the oil wells? What about those people out there? They're having trouble putting food on the table. They can't pay their property tax bills. But these people have put a pretty slick bill together, and they've convinced enough people in Washington, D.C. that it's viable, and it's dangerous.
Well, let's talk a little bit about lobbyists, because there's not only lobbyists in Washington, there's lobbyists in Illinois and Springfield.
Lots of them.
And I was just actually having dinner with someone last night, and they brought up an interesting question, which I don't know the answer to it. I don't know, if he's accurate or if it's just biased, but it just seems like there's heavy lobbyists in Washington. This particular one was between blacktop and concrete. Sure. The concrete person was complaining that the blacktop industry owns Springfield. Sure. And I thought it was interesting. I never heard about it, but him being in the concrete industry, it was an interesting discussion because I understand a lot of other lobbyists that are in there. What level does the lobbyists stop having the power and influence they do? Is there something we can do about it? Is it something where we just have to rely on the trustworthiness of our people we elect, or is there a solution to this heavy-handedness of the people behind these bills?
No, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of that goes on. To a certain degree, it would be nice to be able to say, you know what, we've got some really great people in D.C. and we've got some really great people in Springfield. We can trust them to do the right thing. There are a lot of good people in Springfield. There are a lot of good people in Washington, D.C. There are also people that aren't so good. And there's no doubt that there's some issues there that need to be addressed. I would say that, and I've been talking about this on my campaign from the get-go, transparency is the key. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The Champaign News-Gazette issued an editorial a couple of weeks ago. It said that my campaign was providing authentic leadership and we were setting an example to follow on transparency. We need to know who does business with who. We need to know who, as far as elected officials and lobbyists, who are they related to? Who is their son employed by? Who is their wife employed by?
Absolutely.
Who is their husband employed by? And what are those relationships? Who's funding who? Who's behind who? The way that campaign finance laws are in Illinois right now, it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. And because of that, there's a lot of loopholes. Those loopholes were intentionally designed by lobbyists in Springfield, and we need to get, and it sounds naive to a certain degree, but you need to get honest and open people there. We need more Peter Fitzgeralds.
Okay.
We need a Peter Fitzgerald, who's willing to say, I'm going to say no when it's time to say no. He's going to stand up to his party when he needs to stand up to his party. Peter Fitzgerald ran a clean campaign. He wasn't beholden to anybody. He did the right thing.